Diana, I think there's like a video or internet connection issue. Your face isn't coming through clearly. And I just kind of laughed and went, well, actually, it's pretty clear. This is my luck. And then that was my lesson to remind, myself to let people know when I'm meeting them the first time, particularly on camera, that I do have a unique look. I'm happy to explain that.
Welcome to the podcast about communication in business. I'm your host, George Torok. Did you know that I'm known as the speech coach for executives? Because I help business leaders deliver the intended message for greater success. And we do that through one-on-one coaching or group training for the team. On this podcast, you will hear advice and perspectives from communication experts from around the world. My guest today is Diana Fritz. Here's 3 facts that I think you should know about her. 1, in her new book, Uniquely Imperfect, Uniquely Qualified, Diana shares powerful lessons learned on her 11-plus year cancer journey. Determined not to let cancer define her, Diana balanced her roles as a single mother, executive, and cancer thriver with a smile. A smile always helps. 2, despite her unique one-eye look, Diana has found ways to use her unique look to connect, inspire, and spark fun conversations with others. This is one way she applies her communication skills and values to bring joy and encouragement from casual encounters to workshops, speaking engagements, and even at the gym. 3, Diana's journey forward has been guided by a positive outlook, humor, resilience, faith, and the support of her family. She emphasizes that her life is about the opportunity to make a positive difference in the lives of others. One eye, one life, one matters. Diana Fritz, welcome to Your Intended Message.
George, thank you for having me on this podcast. I just love the name of the podcast because that is where my heart is, like to connect, right? And that's where your message is. So,
And Diane, it's wonderful to be talking with you, and you certainly bring us a unique perspective from your point. And what I find encouraging is that through all this, you can laugh, you can smile, and you can help others. In fact, that seems to be where your focus is on more than helping others. So you suffered a tragedy. You had cancer, and because of that, you lost your eye, and now you have what looks like a flesh patch over your eye. You didn't go for the pirate look with the black eye patch. It might have looked too I don't know, quirky looking, but so you look different at first glance. And I have to admit to our listeners that when I first saw your photo, I'm looking at the photo, I'm thinking, there's something wrong with this photo. It looks like they smudged part of her face. They have to redo the photo. But no, there's no eye there. I imagine you experience weird, strange reactions when people first meet you. How do you leverage that? How do you manage that in a positive way without making people feel bad?
hmm that's a great question, George. And I think when you and I were talking earlier, it reminded me one of the first Zoom calls I joined after my surgery. I didn't even think about it. And I joined the call with a group of people I had never met before. And so as my picture comes on the screen, the host is like, Diana, I think there's like a video or internet connection issue. Your face isn't coming through clearly. And I just kind of laughed and went, well, actually, it's pretty clear. This is my luck. And then that was my lesson to remind, myself to let people know when I'm meeting them the first time, particularly on camera, that I do have a unique look. I'm happy to explain that because Otherwise, right, people are looking at you going, "Okay, what happened? Or is there something wrong?" And I like to just take the elephant out of the room in a sense and just share, why I look the way I do. And I get all kinds of questions, so I have learned to figure out how to just smile and navigate through it. It is a skin patch. I've had somebody at a conference before walk up and say, "I really need a patch like yours." And I pause and like, I don't recommend this one. It's quite painful. I could direct you to a fun one that's much cheaper and not quite as painful. Uh, and it leads to some good conversation. And I have at time frames, George, use the fun patches like pirate patches that have different colors, but this is quite large, so to cover it up is not easy. So I someday I will find one that can incorporate some fun, but for right now, it is what it is. So, and I'm thankful to be alive, let alone worry about the look. So,
Yeah, powerful lesson there. Yeah, sometimes people complain about, oh, I've got this problem or this challenge. Well, you're alive, aren't you? So you're doing better. You're doing okay. You're doing better than a lot of people who aren't. And you make a good point there. Is that when we first meet something, if there's something going on, whether it's a look or whether it's the circumstances, people are going to be distracted until their curiosity is satisfied, and then they can move on.
hmm no, absolutely, and it's a piece to communication, right? So if I'm, I do a lot of disc communication workshops, and I have learned how to incorporate a little bit about how I look the way I do into my introduction, because otherwise the whole time frame with them, they're going to be going, "Okay, well, what's up with her?" In those settings, it's, a lot of communication. We have blind spots. Well, I have a literal blind spot. And so I will use that to introduce and just kind of make light, right? If you're on my left, right, I'm going to be cautious so that I don't run into you, and also to make sure that I turn and look at you, right? Because I forget, right? This is a very literal blind spot. But today we're going to spend time talking about we all have blind spots in communication and how we're all going to learn from that. And when you look at me, it'll be your visual reminder, right? We all have a blind spot. So those are just some ways I try to just acknowledge it at the beginning because I want to get to the point, right, of why we're together and not distract people with curiosity.
And and I suppose that when you raise the topic of blind spots, if you were to just raise it and say, "Well, you have blind spots. Where are your blind spots?" People might say, "No, I don't. I'm okay. I pay attention to what's going on. I listen. But then if you point out first that you have an obvious blind spot, and in your case, it's easy to identify, but yet we might not be so willing or able to identify our own blind spots. So, how do you move forward? How do you go from that transition from, okay, I have an obvious blind spot. Let's look at yours. Let's find yours. Where do you think it is? How do you go through that process?
George, I have adopted that. I feel like each time I work on getting better in that aspect of those transitions, with me being willing to be very vulnerable and transparent to share how I look the way I look and a little bit about my story, that helps to build like a trust and connection, right? Because I'm willing to be open and transparent with with who I am and why I look the way I look. And then as I navigate through any workshop I do, whether it's disc communication or leadership, I work to carry or use examples of how I've messed up, right? Or lessons I've learned, right? To connect. Because if I'm willing to be transparent and authentic about where I've missed the mark, it builds a common ground or a willingness, right, to be vulnerable and to be open to see where the rest of the room, right, has those similar opportunities. When I go first, right, it helps others to want to join in and to be open about where their opportunities are for improvement.
All right. So, help me find my blind spots.
Mm. I think in those aspects, right, when I have people go, "Okay, I don't have any," right? I'll start to use just different questions or stories, right? Like, and a lot of times it's, "When have you had a conversation recently that there's been tension, it hasn't gone well," right? Tell me about that. Tell me about a difficult conversation that you're avoiding possibly, or one that you just had and it didn't end well. Like, give me an example, right? And then that's how we work through where there's potentially a blind spot. Because one thing, there's a powerful reminder, a question I ask myself is, but also something I encourage others in at times together is, what does it look like to be on the other side of me? And what's it like, right, to be on the other side of me? And a lot of times we don't ask that question, right? We just think everybody's just like us, right? Everybody communicates like I do, everybody receives information like I do, and that's just not real, right? That we are not all wired the same, and I always look at that and say, "Thank goodness," right? Because a million Dianas would not be a good thing, right? I don't know, you probably agree, George, a million Georges wouldn't be a good thing, right? We all have a different role to play.
And even though we might believe that we are unique as individuals, we might find it difficult to understand that other people don't think, perceive the same way that we do. There must be something wrong with them.
Mhm. No. So I can, give a personal story here, George, if that's okay, but, my husband, on the DISC profile, if people aren't familiar with DISC, you have, like, dominant and the interactive and the steady, the S, and the C, the conscientious, compliant. I'm an S, right? I'm steady, I wanna make sure everybody's okay, I wanna please people, right? That I'm all people wired. My husband is all task oriented and very, the dominant style. And so I remind him frequently when he tells me people aren't getting it. Why don't they just get it? Why don't they just do what I say? Why don't they just make a quick decision? And I just look at him, I was like, do you realize that only a small percentage of the population is wired like you? So likely you're the one that needs to adapt how you're communicating. It's likely you that needs to adjust. The odds are not with you, right? And it leads to some fun dialogue and conversation, and also for great examples, like during, workshops, and he knows this, so he knows I use him frequently, so
So how do we find out the best way to connect with the people we're talking to without putting them through a DISC survey? We can't always do that. Now, with our own team, we could do that. We certainly could find out. But how do we, in conversation with people, are there triggers? Are there phrases, reactions? How do we do that?
yeah, there's absolutely all of those things, George, triggers, reactions, actions. I think, one element that I strive to do is listen and watch, like, the body language or the dynamics. I am not a strong personality that just comes in the room and wants to take over. I like to listen and watch the dynamics in the room, and that's been a helpful thing to me, is to watch and observe, right? And the person that, greets you quickly and wants to give you a big hug and is talkative, right? They are likely, talking is very important to them. They like to tell their story. They want to be heard. So I need to be conscious, right? And give space and not be annoyed, right? That they want to talk and tell a story. I need to understand that. If it's somebody that's really quick and to the point, that's another point I need to think through, right? I need to be really quick and to the point too, right? Or I've actually lost them within the first few minutes. And, those that are very, reserved, right? That is something to pay attention to as well, right? If they're not as willing to give a hug or you can see them like shifting back a little bit, respect that, right? That means you've got more room to kind of earn their trust or earn them wanting to communicate with you or participate in the workshop, right? I can watch that and go, okay, I'm not going to call on them first, right? They need more time. And I think one of my big life lessons has been it's not about me, right? It's about them, right? It's about who I'm interacting with, and that applies as a parent, as a spouse, as a somebody facilitating a workshop, as somebody, speaking with kids or, doing it differently. It's not about me, it's about them, and so I need to pause, right, and make sure I'm present and understanding where they're at before I'm assuming discharge forward, right? I've gotta pause and take a mini internal assessment before I keep charging forward.
And Diana, you mentioned the disc, and not everyone
Yeah.
may be familiar with it. So let's just clarify the four letters. What do they stand for again?
Um, so D is dominant, I is interactive, and S is steady, and C is compliant. And depending on like at a some disc test or assessments, we may label them differently, but the theme is the same, right? You have the dominant, interactive, steady, and compliant.
Dominant. That's clear. I know some people like that.
Yeah.
Interactive. Sometimes we refer to them as the socializers type, typically.
Storyteller,
Um,
socializer, yeah.
okay. Steady. What's steady mean?
Steady is more this is I'm like all S, so all steady. Often the great listeners, the peacemakers, not necessarily the ones that are going to be just willing to just stand and tell lots of stories or lead something, but they are always watching to make sure the team's okay, the people are okay. Very people wired, but more probably focused on listening and the peacemaking elements of a personal connection.
And okay, so peacemaking. How is that different from compliant?
So the compliance side is more focused on task versus people. So, thinking through facts are very important versus feelings, the numbers, the data, the plan, whereas the steady personality is more looking at people, how are they feeling? What's their response gonna be? How are we going to get people to work together? So it's a lot of variation, right, between people focus and task focus.
Ah, okay, okay. So compliant, those are perhaps the accountants and the engineers,
Mhm.
production foremen.
Yes, the project managers, yes, let's
Mm,
yeah. Mhm.
got it. Okay. All right. And I'm gonna challenge you, and based on our conversation so far, where would you peg me? And I'm gonna add a second question to that.
Yeah.
Can a person move between these categories depending on the situation?
They can, they definitely can, and that's an element for me personally, my S is my primary, definitely. But in under stressful situations, my S is going to go even higher, right? I'm going to care even more about people and is everybody okay? But when I'm adopting for my role as like an executive or a leader, my S and D and I are all equal, right? Because I have to adjust, right, for the role that I'm in. But no matter this my C, my level of conscientious to detail and compliance, that's always really low, right? That doesn't that doesn't get better, right? So, but I know that that's my blind spot. So I know that that's where I need to have somebody working with me that is very skilled in that area around the data and the facts and the details, because that's not where I'm going to shine. I know that. So, you asked me about you, George, so this is a fun see, this is good fun. I would say for this podcast, you definitely have to be, an I and an interactive, right? But I don't know that it's natural. I think there's some C, right? Some focus on data and insights that's a part of you to be doing what you do.
And yeah, and I guess I do move between it, and the task oriented is not my favorite activity. So that's why I create systems
Yeah.
to accommodate that, to make it less stressful on me. So I can, but I know I need to do the tasks,
Mhm.
but I have to make it into a system that's easier for me. And certainly I learned to become how to become a better conversationalist, better interviewer. I was that wasn't natural, and I would probably think that I'm in that steady
Mhm.
category where I tend to sit back and listen when I'm in a group situation, and like you, I'm seldom the first one to speak.
Mhm.
And if, in fact, people who know me well, when we're in a group, they never call on me first. They know better.
Ah,
I don't want to speak first.
yeah.
I want to listen. I want to take it in. I want to hear what other people are saying first before I speak. And it's not that I'm afraid to speak. It's just that I want more information.
Mhm. Yeah, and that isn't that so I can relate to that, and I that's been a challenge was a challenge of mine early on in my executive career because I was a young executive, the only female in the room, about 15 years younger than the males in the room, and many of them were more dominant, and I would get challenged, "Diana, you're not we have something on the agenda, and you're not giving an immediate response and what your thoughts are." And I was like, "Well, I'm not ready, right? I'm still thinking, right?" And so I had to learn how to adjust to that. And so one of the ways I adjusted as a young executive was I would ask, "Okay, let me help prep the agenda. Let me help feed the agenda and get ready so that way I have a day and I'm going to be ready to engage, right? Whereas everybody else is going to give an immediate insight. I need a day." So that was how I learned to adjust, right? If I'm the one preparing the agenda and the content, then I've had my time and I can contribute, in the meeting, right? Versus needing more time and space.
Mm. So we both have developed systems to make up for our potential, our blind spots, our weak spots, because we still need to do those things, but it doesn't work. And yes, in the same situation, if I'm the one in the meeting and people are throwing out ideas or demands, I'm listening, and if they call on me, I've learned to respond with, well, my first thought is,
Mm,
so I'll make it clear that I'm still thinking, but
yeah.
here's my first thought. Here's my first impression. And so at least they know that I'm listening and paying attention. I'm just not making noise like they seem to be making noise. And it's annoying because I'm trying to think and I wish you people would shut up.
Yes, yes, we can relate.
Mm. And so when people discover, first of all, they need to admit that they have at least one blind spot, probably more than one.
Yeah.
And it may vary depending on the situation and maybe even the time of day, and perhaps even their state, their energy state, or where they're at. So they do have blind spots, and it can change.
Yeah.
So that they first need to get through that, which some might be more willing to admit than others. However, it means that they need to admit that they're imperfect.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And when you see people go through that transition, realizing or willing to admit,
Mhm.
see, it's one thing to be imperfect and know it. It's another thing to admit in the open, oh, I'm not going to tell people. I'll
Right.
get fired. I'll get fired. I won't get the
Yeah.
promotion. They won't follow me. They won't listen to me if I tell them I'm imperfect.
Yeah.
So, how do you get people past that obstacle, admitting their
Mhm.
flaws, their imperfections, their blind spots?
You know, so, partly as me being transparent throughout, right, admitting some of mine, um, the the DISC, report output that I use is a part of Maxwell Leadership and then combining DISC into it. And so I'll have different phases throughout a workshop where I'm having them where I'm talking and guiding them through, and then there's times where I have them work in pairs. And I find when they're working in pairs, just one other person, it's a little bit easier to talk about, "Oh, yeah, my report said this, and at first I looked at it and said, I don't agree with that. But now that I've seen some of the videos and we've walked through this, I'm kinda getting it now," right? And then they can laugh a little bit and lighten up, right, when they're talking about it just side by side. It's a lot more comfortable than talking about it with the whole group. And So that's usually how I start their connection or their interaction slowly, rather than asking them to share in front of everybody where they're at. And then at the end, right, you get to a lot more openness. I will tell you as well, many times, doing a workshop, probably some of the ones you do, right, as well, right, George, with what your focus is people walk in a room a lot of times thinking, okay, how I did on this disc assessment or whatever, right, is going to determine whether or not I keep my job, right? So I like work to alleviate that at the beginning, right? We're just working on how we raise the bar, right? On how we can work together better, um, and um, and share, my lessons on how it's helped me in my career, and then that helps to go, okay, right? I'm here to work on getting better as a team, right? This is my job isn't at stake, right? It is my opportunity to improve.
And what has been some of the best reactions that you've received from people when they've fully embraced their blind spot and how to deal with it? What kind of reactions have you gotten from people?
Um, some of them, the ones I appreciate the most, right? I'm often there for a work perspective, but the aha light goes off on, oh, this applies personally too. This is why my wife says this, right? Or this is why my child is struggling here. And those I appreciate, right? Because I feel like it is helping them broader than work, right? And um, that I love, right? Because to me, every time I get a chance to work on it, to facilitate a workshop, it's making me better too. So, and learning, I get to learn from them. But I think those are some of my most critical aha moments or things that are rewarding for me is to see somebody say, okay, I was able to apply this at home. I was able to apply it with this client. I was hitting a roadblock with this customer and I get it now, right? You've helped to open up, right? Something that I was resistant to. And that's why I do it, right? To help others. So I love that.
Mm. And Diana, how do you how do you recharge? How do you refresh? Right, because this takes energy. It takes energy that you're putting out for others. How do you look after yourself?
So my background is, virtual background, but it's a picture of the beach at sunrise. So that's actually a key piece of how I actually look after myself. So I get up every morning around 5 a.m. and I either am walking to the beach and just standing there for a little bit, taking in a moment, or I take my journal and I sit there, right? And I journal and refresh and let the day go yesterday, but also learn from it, right? I have an element of review, reflection and application that I strive to do every day. And then exercise is also a key part of how I push to take care of myself so that I can take care of others.
Mm. And is that something that you remind other people to do too? To take whether it's exercise or the walk to the beach, to refresh themselves and say, yeah, you're not perfect, but you're a work in process.
It is, and I think how I work on reminding people to do that varies, right, depending on the space I'm in. I realize, journaling, people may look and go, okay, only, there's an element of that that's tied to my faith, right? But taking time to reflect is important no matter faith or no faith, right? Taking time to reflect, to pause, to think about how your day went, what you need to let go, what you need to work on. That's important for everybody. And I think the other element that I work to encourage too is we're often moving so fast. Um, we're moving faster, right, than when I was a kid, right? When I was in college, I had to handwrite my paper. I didn't have a computer. I didn't have a cell phone. And today, right, we're just everything is at us, right, on our electronics or computers or wherever. We need to take time to pause. Otherwise, we forget who we are. And so and what drives us and what inspires us, and we become, a victim of the moment, right? Instead of taking time to pause and make sure we get to make the most of our moments.
One of the one of your messages is that we can reframe our challenges,
Mm.
as you have done. How do you help people get through reframing, and what does that look like?
George, reframing is, I don't often say it that way, so I like that. I think, many people will look at me and say, "Okay, if I were you, right, I would probably be hiding, or I would try to figure out a way to do that, hide this or that type of thing, and you're just smiling." And I'm like, "Well, um, I'm happy to be alive, right?" So there's a whole context of this getting to this, right, that you don't even realize. But I learned, early on in my life, when I was in college, actually, I was reading Viktor Frankl's A Man's Search for Meaning, which is a powerful book. And I remember at the time I was going, "Oh, this is a little boring," right? The first few pages maybe are, right? You got to keep reading. That applies to lots of areas of life. But I had gone to college to play basketball. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just wanted to play basketball. But I tore my ACL, which is a season-ending injury, and thankfully, I was reading that book, and I took that and went, "Okay, so he's in a Nazi prison camp. He's still choosing positive. He's still being kind. So, you know what? No matter what happens to me, right, I still have the freedom to choose how I respond. And if Viktor Frankl can choose positive, then my goodness, right? Well, I can too." And it has helped me to look at whether it's, my cancer diagnosis. Did I want that? Absolutely not. It was the year I was turning 40. I had just become a single mom. I was an executive. We were getting ready to sell a company. Like, I didn't need that, right? But I also know, and I can look back over those years, that if I wouldn't have gone, okay, there's a reason why I'm in these hospital walls. Who do I get to help? Who do I get to meet? Who do I get to talk to? I would have missed out on so many powerful moments and interactions with people over these past 11 years. Like, I have met some of the most amazing doctors and people and patients and that type of thing that I would have missed out on. So, um, it's easy to go, "Okay, I poor me," right? But then our adversity defines us, and I never wanted to be a cancer patient, right? I was talking to somebody earlier today, right? I knew that I had a choice to make, right? Cancer could define me or it could refine me, and I wanna be refined, I wanna get better, and it is just I wouldn't wish cancer on anybody, but I would remind everybody that our adversities, introduce a person to ourselves, right? And who are we gonna be, and what opportunities are in front of us. So there's always there's always a glimmer of hope somewhere, or there's always a reason that we can
Mm,
grab onto.
positive thought. Diane, as we prepare to wrap up, imagine you're sitting down with a team leader
Mm.
and you can offer them advice, one, two, or three pieces of advice about dealing with or helping their team deal with their own challenges, whether they be physical, emotional, mental. And the physical we can see,
Yeah.
we can acknowledge, but the emotional and mental can't always see that. What advice would you give to that team leader? One, to gently probe to discover and perhaps help that person feel better in the group.
Yeah. No, I think what has been an important lesson for me as a team leader, and I kinda smiled as I said that, George, because many of the people that reported to me like years ago, right? I still keep in contact with because I don't ever want to lose that personal connection to them. I always will tell them I'm always a mentor to you. So I'm always here. We may not be at the same company, have the same business card, right? But I'm always here for you. That personal connection is so meaningful, and having one-on-ones, whether even if they're short, right, is so impactful to try to understand and get to know the person that's on your team. And that applies to being a coach, right, on a basketball team or being a team leader is finding time and space to do short one-on-ones, to get to know them and to understand what inspires somebody and what takes them down, right? So that you can understand how to be a partner with them and then understand how to help them work together as a team. Because it's really tough to lead a team if you don't have a connection with all of the people on the team. And I think one of the things that Maxwell emphasizes greatly, and I living this, right, and it's something I'm working through right now, but when you're brought in to lead a team, the people are all looking at you and going, okay, can I trust them? Can they help me? And, are they going to serve me, right? Is it about them or what's it about, right? They're all asking questions. And so, um, taking the time, right, to get to know them individually helps to get them the answers to those questions and for you to build the rapport that you need to truly lead a team.
Mm, powerful insights there. My guest today is Diana Fritz, reminding you that your challenges can define you, or you can choose for them to refine you. If you like what you heard, tell your friends and post your 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, because that helps more listeners find us. Come back every week for more practical insights to help you deliver your intended message. I'm your host, George Torok.